I had a great teacher that talked to me about that mentality of fail forward fast. And it seems negative at first. Like I'm a big language guy, and I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't know if that sits right with me. But then I'm like, that's really brilliant and profound because so many people fear failure. Well, I'm not going to peg it because, what if I screw up? What's that going to be like with people? They don't realize that like failure is the learning opportunities, and everybody who's got anything great has made a lot of mistakes along the way, but they're just not fearful of taking action.
So often from players is a mental mistake is trying to play it safe when you're playing well. It's like trying to guard the lead or guard the round you're having. What would you say to players that it's like you get off to a hot start and you're like, oh, let's just make par? Why is that like such a bad idea, and what's a better alternative?
What are you setting out to do here? And why do you want to visualize, not just write it down? Writing down too is a big act for your subconscious. So write it, physically write it down.
Mm-hmm.
But then visualization is goal setting for your subconscious. This is you starting to get into that experience and implant it deep into your mind.
As a mental golf coach, I've read a ton of golf books and sports psychology books because I want to help you play better golf without changing your swing. And the first pillar of Wicked Smart Golf is, of course, mastering your mental game. The problem is that a lot of this great advice isn't always customized to how you're hardwired. That's why today I brought back John Weir, the creator of Mental Golf Type, to help you understand how to use your own unique personality to play your best golf. When you do, you're going to stay out of stress and get in the zone a lot more often. Then, when you learn your mental golf type, you can revisit some of the books you might have already read and figure out which advice is helping and which advice might be hurting your game. John Weir is not only the creator of Mental Golf Type, he's also an accomplished coach, hypnotherapist, has caddied on the PGA Tour, and done a lot more. So today I brought him back for the fourth time on Wicked Smart Golf Podcast to help you learn how to master your mindset and finally play to your potential. To make the most out of this interview, make sure to take your free Mental Golf Type self-assessment. The link is going to be down below and pinned in the comments. That way you can go through and figure out your unique personality type and start to use these tips to play wicked smart.
All right, John, thanks so much for being back on Wicked Smart Golf, our first four-time guest. Thanks again for being here, buddy.
Oh, I'm really excited. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. I could talk with you all day about the mental game. We've had, you've been some of our top performing episodes. I think last year you were the number one shared episode. So people can't get enough of Mental Golf Type and figuring out what the hell we're doing with this mental game. So let's give a quick rewind though, for those of you listeners that might not know who you are and Mental Golf Type. If you could give us a little backdrop and, kind of get us started, that would be awesome to learn more about you.
Sure. My name is John Weir. I'm the creator of Mental Golf Type. I've been in mental performance now for 24 years now, believe it or not. I got my start learning and diving into things like hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming and really trying to study the subconscious. But it wasn't until I learned about the personality and its roles in golf and performance that it started really quickly becoming the obsession. So we've spent the last 14 years or so really researching and exploring mental golf type and the role of personality. Spent a couple of years at the Mike Bender Golf Academy doing a lot of the research and development. I had the great privilege of working with him and Cheryl Anderson, Krista Tino down at Seminole State College. So we have a lot of different team formats and things. And I also spent a lot of years caddying, caddy for Austin Truslow, caddy for a lot of pros, juniors, everybody in the development to just really get that inside experiential look at what they're doing real time on the course. And that was really fun. So now we're consulting with a lot of coaches and spreading the word about mental golf type and helping people play their best golf by eliminating stress.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's actually been 2 years this month since I learned about MGT, because I'll never forget. I learned it and hit 28 of 28 fairways the first 2 days, and I did the impossible. And I was like, oh, I'm a believer. And so been sharing the MGT gospel ever since then. So appreciate you putting all this content and all of 14, 24 years of hard work. It's not easy to do. So we appreciate you sharing it with us.
Oh, really exciting. It's a labor of love. I mean, I love the game and I love helping people. And just real quick, what we're all about is we take a three-pronged approach really to enhancing the mental game. First thing we think is the number one skill is eliminating stress out of your game. We then look at your shot process. Again, we want stress out of there and how to leverage that based on your strengths. And then really cultivating the self-image. And if you can really hone in on those three components in your mental game, extraordinary things can really take place.
Yeah, that's actually a really good segue because we were talking before we hit record a little bit about stuff you can be doing at home. And I think that that's a really good starting point. So today, again, we're going to cover the mental mistakes that a lot of golfers are making because, of course, there's, things we can do, but there's some things we also should not be doing. So we want to avoid these mistakes and hopefully going to kind of speed up that success and have less stress, like you mentioned, and get in the zone more often. And so one of the things that I had said here is just not training your mental game at home. A lot of people just think the mental game starts, when you pull up to the golf course and you're on that first tee. But as you and I both know, it's definitely a full-time job. Our brain is not shutting down when we're not at the golf course. So what are some things people can be doing, at home? And you mentioned the self-image too, and kind of putting out positive visualization and stuff. Can you share a little bit of what you'd recommend and why that is so important to work on our mindset off the course?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's so important because you can't separate your mind from performance. So many golfers think like, okay, I can isolate technique and then I'll work on my mental game. But your mind is constantly influencing everything you do on the course and in practice. In fact, you're grooving parts of your game even as you're thinking about it off the course. So we got to be one, really paying attention to what we're replaying in our mind because that's actually grooving whether we're going to be producing more success or more struggles out there. One of the biggest things that people can do right away to start honing in off their off-course mental game is really owning the first and last 20 minutes of every day. So we call them their morning and evening like brain power-ups, and you can even do the same type of routine before a round of golf as a way to really get yourself in gear. Why is the first 20 and last 20 minutes of every day so important? It's because
I
when
know
you're in
that one, John. I was excited. I thought that was a question. I was like, man,
oh,
I graduated the mental golf school. I was excited about it. I
well, go
wanted to at
ahead,
least.
fill me in.
All right.
Fill me in.
Is it because the subconscious is still more active than the conscious because we're kind of in a different brain wave, and so we're able to be a little bit more acceptable to new suggestions when auto suggestion is at a higher peak there?
Yeah, that's 100%. Yeah. So our brains are oscillating between four primary brain waves every day. Beta is full alertness. Alpha is that relaxed awareness state. We got theta, that's kind of like when you're laying in bed, losing in touch with the bed and the surroundings, going into like a dream state. And then we have deep delta waves, which is unconscious sleep. Well, every day as we're cycling and waking up and going to bed, our brains are rotating through this. So as an adult, our most receptive times in the day are those first 20 minutes. Most people are just leaving it to chance and random. They don't understand like your brain is a supercomputer and you're designed to direct it. And these are the times when you can really kind of groove some things in and have a lot more acceptance. So one of the things you want to do is right away is have some sort of affirmation or mantra to do whenever your feet touch the floor. Because one thing we want to do is wake up feeling good, excited, and really ready to and energized to start our day. One of my mentors back in the hypnosis world told me, when your feet touch the floor, you stand up and you say, what a glorious day filled with love, opportunity, and potential. And one of the reasons he said to do that is your subconscious mind goes on the search. So as you use self-talk, as you're using the questions through your day, it isn't so much the words, but the images and the movies and the narratives it's really creating in your mind. And so when you're telling your mind what a glorious day it is filled with love, opportunity, and potential, you're starting to set the radar for it to go out, seek, and find. So I thought that was a pretty powerful suggestion. He said, try it for a month. I'd been doing it now for, over 25 years. I now wake up in the mornings we were talking and just fully energized. I wake up, I'm ready to start the day. And a lot of that's from that first step of the conditioning. The next thing you can kind of do is we go in and start asking power questions because questions are often more powerful than self-talk. Again, questions put your brain on the search for things. So Tony Robbins was really big in putting out questions like this and talking about its effectiveness. But we immediately go into what am I grateful for? We're identifying things of gratitude. Gratitude is the same vibration as abundance. As we're starting to get into gratitude, we're really building up a great interior vibration for ourselves. We're building that again, finding more things to be grateful for the day. It's a really powerful thing to put your brain on. This could be related to your life. It could be related to your golf. But more so than just answering the questions is taking a moment to pause, reflect on something like that. Like, I'm really grateful for my dog. My dog is one of my companions. And then reflecting on what is it about my dog that makes me feel so good? And I get that feeling, and it's that emotion and that drive that really kind of sets our day up for success. Another good power question. What am I proud about in my life? Or what am I motivated to do? What challenge am I excited to take on in my day? So using questions like this. And then when you're brushing your teeth, you want to make this a part of your routine. So create a little self-talk script for yourself. This isn't just like, hey, I hit fairways. No, talk about the qualities of the golfer you're aspiring to be. Take a moment to think of that evolved self who's got past all your problems and challenges. What is that player like? And begin to describe those qualities. Something short and sweet, something that can take a minute to 2 minutes every day to read. And after you brush your teeth, you then stand there nice and tall and either affirm out loud or inside your mind that suggestions. So it's not just about feeling good in the morning. When you're doing that, what's happening in your brain? Where there's a thing, and I might not be pronouncing right, it's heavy in learning theory where you have neurons that fire together, wire together. So every day you're doing repetition, you're binding more of these neurons and you're creating a more diverse and dense network. Next, as you're visualizing this, as you're saying this in the morning, your brain's creating that myelination or lining your neural pathways to make it more efficient and make that pathway more grooved so you can recall these thoughts through your day when you're on the course. And then our superpower, which you're really activating, neuroplasticity. So as you're constantly saying this and visualizing it, the brain's superpower is it's amendable and adaptable based on the things you're saying and your experiences in life. So it's literally yours to mold. And during these times in the day is when you're most receptive to these new thoughts. It gets in there and it really sets the stage for your whole day. If you're not taking advantage of that time, again, it's left to chance. The negativity bias will come in. We have a life that's kind of up and down. So I've learned really early on, I was really blessed that when you own that, you're really owning the day. And then the reverse is happening at night. As you're going to bed and you're doing similar things, your brain, your subconscious is being filled with all your goals. As you're starting to go into those different waves and brainwave states, your brain starts dreaming about these goals. It starts seeing yourself carrying out these things. And then for some reason, you wake up in the morning and you're really excited to go out there and practice and go take on your challenges, and life evolves.
I couldn't agree more with all that. I mean, I have felt that so much lately. My affirmation was from our last guest. I am the best putter in the world. I have I have it right next to my bed. I have it next to my sink when I'm brushing my teeth. I have it in my office. So and it's so funny that you said that though. I wake up so excited. I'm grateful, obviously, to have this business and to, share all this stuff. But it's like, it really does come from, like you said, when you go to bed and you're thinking about your goals on and off the course, and you're using your mind intentionally versus just letting stuff happen. And you nailed it too with the gratitude. I mean, that's one of the things, people learn about gratitude journals and things like that, but there's so much power, like you said, with that it can just have, excuse me, such a big impact on how you feel and what you want to do and your motivation levels. And that's the first chapter of my book. And that was even before I even met you, which is to have an attitude of gratitude. So you nailed that. And I feel like if people just stopped listening here, they would learn so much. But obviously there's so much more wisdom that we're going to cover, but that is a fantastic start. So thanks for sharing so much.
Here's the mistake that you think like just a one-time repetition or doing this is going to be the thing. It's not. You have to do it consistent. But here's the thing. If you just do it consistently, it works. Your mind works the exact same way. It's a matter, like Tom Brady had that great Hall of Fame speech, and he just said, look, one of the reasons I'm here is just because of consistency. Like, what if it was just you getting up and doing that a minute and a half of self-talk each day to be able to manifest and create your dreams and boost your performance and just your overall well-being? What if all it took was just that little commitment? And yes, that's the guarantee. If you just did that, check where you are in a month. After 2 months, 3 months, you're going to start seeing the difference. But it's just a matter of consistency. And so much progress mentally is just a matter of putting in that minute, that 1% improvement, and looking to make those little gains mentally, because you can't expect to say like, hey, I'm the best putter in the world one time. What's happened is there's a whole different neuro pathway that's grooved. And that might be in line with some of the old things that you believed about yourself, or things from the repetitive negative self-talk, or the picture that we've designed around that aspect of the game. So if that's where you're at right now, when you say, hey, I'm a good putter, understand like that's a little edge. a little edge, a little edge. And we got to keep running that program consistently to go through those same three things I was telling you about.
Hmm.
Guaranteed, it starts rerouting and your brain becomes more efficient with that thought. But you got to do it off the course so that when you're getting to the course, you have these go-to thoughts. You've laid these foundational tracks. So when it really matters, you're ready to qualify. You got that big putt. And when you say, I am the best putter, you have all this conditioning coming in and all this visualizing that's been backing it. And then that's when the magic happens. Again, just from the little consistencies, that 1% gain, doing your self-talk morning and night, that 1% gain, seeing it on your wall, saying it to yourself, visualizing it. And so it takes work, but I promise if you put in the work, your brain will adjust to what you're thinking about too. And it'll get really, really easy to produce those results in that type of thinking.
Yeah, you nailed it too. It's just about consistency. It's not a one-time thing and it'll all just work out, right? It is that there's only two ways to retrain the subconscious, and that's through repetition and hypnosis. And so if you're, able to consistently do something over and over again, that's how you're going to make that lasting change. But you need that consistency in anything, right? Golf and life and business. Like you have to just stay. It's all about staying consistent. Literally, that's the only thing. But most people just quit and because they don't see results. And it's like, man, you got to just trust this process. This is literally how we're hardwired. So hopefully, people will have some positive golf affirmations next to their toothbrush now. So they're going to get wildly optimistic to start and end the day. And that actually kind of leads to the second mistake that I feel like a lot of people make is worrying about results at the course. So we kind of talked about, training at home. Like it seems like you're saying, and I feel like we've had a conversation about too, like create your self-image at home, right? Like get clear, like you can win this tournament. You can become a scratch golfer. You can hit your goals. That's great. But the biggest problem I see with almost every one of my students, especially the younger players who are playing for a college spot or trying to win a tournament, they're always worried about results. So I kind of noted here that the second mental game mistake was worrying about score during the round. And so I feel like that's okay to imagine that when you're at home and you're sitting there and you're doing all the stuff we just talked about, that's a good thing, right? Because we're putting that out in the universe. We're feeling that positivity. We're getting clear about our objectives. But once we get to the golf course, we got to switch to more of a process thinking. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, we talk about ends and means, or you have outcomes and process, or another way of looking at it could be like ego drives and mastery drives. So yeah, 100%. So the basic visualization process you're doing at home, and this is what we run all of our players through is, yeah, get in there, imagine that end result.
Mm-hmm.
What are you setting out to do here? And why do you want to visualize, not just write it down? Writing down too is a big act for your subconscious. So write it, physically write it down.
Mm-hmm.
But then visualization is goal setting for your subconscious. This is you starting to get into that experience and implant it deep into your mind. So recently we worked with this young lady and she had called us up. She was 2 shots back on her world championships round and she wanted to really bring her best to finish this out. So we had her visualizing in the night, holding the trophy, seeing the result, having the celebration, connecting with that feeling of satisfaction of doing the job. So you got that. Then you imagine looking through it. And there you are on the course, doing what it takes to deliver on that goal. Now, that might be being committed in your shot process and seeing it working like a well-oiled machine. You're going to have mistakes come up. How are you as that champion handling that? What were you doing that got through that adversity or that challenge that got there? And you're seeing yourself carrying out those responsibilities on the course. And then you drive in your commitment. Why am I doing it? Because this is the end result. I'm committing to handling my mistakes like this because I want the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do this process of ends and means, ends and means. Now you're right. When players get out on the course now, what's a big mistake? They start focusing on what you could call DNA goals. And what do you mean by like a DNA goal? Well, every single golfer has certain goals that are just already pre-hardwired into you that you don't even have to think about, that just kind of get into the way. And what are some of those goals? I want to shoot a really low score.
Yep.
Okay. When have you ever teed up to not want to pursue your personal best, to go out and shoot a low number? I've never heard anybody say, Michael, I've been working with you for a couple of weeks now. I'm going to go post the highest number I possibly can today. Okay. Nobody thinks that way. When have you ever wanted to hit a shot poorly? When have you not wanted to make the putt, to score well, to deliver it? I mean, these are like DNA built-in goals. So this is in a way interference. So one way to kind of separate it is like if these are kind of like those things, I want to score well, I want to execute this shot well. Great, everybody does. We don't even have to think about it. It's better now to be in what's my process to make that happen. And so we shift more into process goals because those are things you're directly in control of. Those are things that you can track and actually have consistency in. And in fact, the more consistent you are in your mental process goals out there and working your routine, the more consistent you're actually going to be finally with your physical swing, as consistent as that can possibly be. But it's creating that environment in your brain and executing those process goals that will ultimately lead there. So again, we were chatting about the Olympics, and it was really interesting. So we have a lot of guys out there when they were on their whiteboards writing down their main goal, and they were all outcome goals. It was all the same thing, win a gold medal. There was one player in the field with a process goal, have fun, and that was Mr. Scotty Scheffler. So again, when he's looking at this is the mastery. And when we're looking at pursuing the mastery on the course, executing really good processes, align with what you do well and your strengths, bringing that commitment, making sound decisions, etc., bringing it all the way tee to green. When we're really committed to working that process and those mastery components, outcome goals are usually achieved pretty easy. That becomes byproduct. So again, if you're getting caught up in DNA goals, it's like you don't even need to be there. Get into the process again. That's fine. I want to do well here. How? Good decision here. Let's make our good rehearsal, good commitment, another check mark in our shot process. That becomes a reality. Yeah, I'm on the 9th hole. I got the best round going for me. I can see myself doing great. Good. You're in the ends. Now bring it back into the means. Get back into that process of delivering what you need to do to manifest that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you too. Is like that's bound to happen, right? Like especially when you're playing well. Like I don't think anyone ever gets away from that. I don't think you ever get to some Zen level where you don't have those thoughts. It's like you said though, it's acknowledging it and replacing it with, well, what did I do to get here? How can I go back to my, process? How can I get focused and disciplined? It's like that's if you just focus on that, because so many, like every person, and I used to be guilty of this too. I want to win this tournament. I've never won this tournament, and it's always like, this is the tournament I want to win. It's this club championship. It's, this event. And it's like, you're just putting so much more stress on yourself. And one thing I always learned from you, when I think it was our second or third interview, was just to set birdie goals instead of score goals. I've loved that. I still set birdie goals every time. I don't hit them every time, but the time that I did hit it, I won the tournament. So it kept me focused on something to chase a little bit without worrying about, the big picture, actual total score goal.
Yeah, and another thing we do is I like to look at things, even on tour, we're looking at things as 3-hole tournaments. We're not really looking at a full 18. If you're looking at trying to string along, let's say 90% or 100% processes for 18 holes, that is a big mental task.
Yeah.
Yet that's what these guys on tour are doing constantly, right? But how do we chip along and how do we actually stay into that? We use 3-hole tournament segments.
Okay, so like when you're on the bag with Austin, you guys are like, all right, the holes 1 through 3, 4 through 6, like that's how you guys
every
are
time
thinking
the
about
pin
it.
sheet changes, it's a realignment of goals, and we kind of reassess. Well, our goal is we can do 100% in processes for these 3 holes. Like we're trying to get 1 birdie in those 3 and hit on 100% on the processes and kind of go fairway green, whatever. As soon as it flips, I'm realigning and we're recommitting to the new short-term goal. Okay, we did that. Let's get another 100% here, fresh new 3, right? And we're looking for that another birdie in those 3 and hitting on those 100% processes. But every time that pin sheet's changing, we're reloading that goal. We're keeping it right in front of us into something that's short-term and obtainable. And it's just moving us along. Now, if you have a bad 3 holes, it's okay. We're now at reloading. Good. We're done with that. Let's go back to our original goals. Let's hit that birdie number, hit the process number. And that's sometimes a lot more manageable.
Yeah, it was just thinking about 3 versus 18, just hearing it sounds a lot more. Yeah, it's just like it's so simple. I've definitely heard of, either 6 threes or 3 sixes. I think that's just so key. And I think that, everyone would benefit from having that. And when you actually are in tournaments and you have the pin sheets, you actually have that. That's really nice to have. Sometimes I, draw a line after a bad hole, be like it's over, and, kind of have that reset. And actually kind of leads me into where I didn't have this on here originally, but I think that I hear it just, so often from players is a mental mistake is trying to play it safe when you're playing well. It's like trying to guard the guard the lead or guard the round you're having. What would you say to players that, it's like you get off to a hot start and you're like, oh, let's just make par. Why is that like such a bad idea, and what's a better alternative?
Yeah, good question. I mean, for us, it's maybe a little different. Austin's played in a lot of Monday qualifiers. I've worked with a lot of guys on the Mondays, and the Mondays you learn a different mindset. It's like you just got to
The
keep
Monday
pushing for more
mindset, right?
birdies. Yeah, there's no time to ease off, or it's
Yeah.
already people are firing. But normally, yeah, where it goes back to the same thing. They're going back into the DNA goals. It's good that you're playing well. You should be
Yeah.
reinforcing that. This is why I practice.
Yeah.
I'm good at making birdies and pars. I'm comfortable with this because that's why I'm putting in all the work in my game. When my dad was around, this is something I drove in with him, and that really, really helped. It's like, why are you playing? You should feel comfortable with this. This is why you're putting in all that time. So you reinforce that. And then again, your mind's going to jump out ahead a little bit. And you say, that's fine. I'm going to come in well. Why? Because I'm going to lock down my processes on these 3 holes, just like I've done up to this point. Let's lock this one down and bring it. So again, it's when you think of like even a meditation, what's the basic thing on a meditation? It's there to be aware of your breathing and notice when your mind's wandering and kind of be a little bit more in an observer role. I try to tell my students it's the same thing when you're looking at the meditation of the actual round of golf. What's going to be the big thing that's going to make your mind wander? It's going to go out to score. It's going to go out and drift ahead. But what's the meditation? We're not going back to the breath. We're going back to the process. So when you're out on a heater, you go, yes, this is why I'm putting in the work. Let's keep it going. How am I going to do it? Another good process. Oh, I'm struggling. How am I going to come in with a good number? And we're drifting out ahead. Again, we bring it back like that meditation. I can bring it in because I'm going to get back into this process. And it's a similar thing. In breath meditation, the instructions are simple, but it takes a lot of discipline, but it's just the practice. And again, if we can bring that type of concept into understanding, like, oh, I'm in that DNA goal, bring it back. Yeah, you can still feel confident and keep leveraging it. But no, we're not changing our decisions. You want to keep speaking in terms of what you want to be creating out there always. Avoidance doesn't work. So
I was going to say, you led me
swing
perfectly into the
to-
next one. Was like, that was the number, like one of the first things I mentioned in my book, and exactly what I hear so many people: don't do this, don't do that. So that was the next mental mistake, is stop using the word don't and be intentional with what you want from your shots, from your game. Why is the word don't so confusing to your mind, and why is it so negative?
It just doesn't process negatives well. And so when it's hearing do and don't, subconscious mind doesn't discern really the language. And so it generates pictures. So that's the real power of your self-talk. What you're saying is actually building the mental image. So don't slice it. The brain has to generate that image. And if we don't correct that image, the brain is assuming that's your goal. So look at the high efficiency rate of how well you execute after the don'ts, because it has a nice clear picture of what you're not wanting to do. The brain goes, okay, I got the goal. All right. And now you've seen a swing to produce this. It's just so powerful. And you go, oh my gosh. So again, it's double work. I mean, I'm a lazy guy in many ways. I don't want to have to do double work. That's why I train myself to think positive, because I'm starting with the picture that I want to create. But again, the brain doesn't process negative language well. It will generate that picture, assume it's the goal. So it's really just a matter of new goal setting for your shots. So speaking in terms of what you do want is, again, articulating, creating a whole different visual image. But if you're speaking and don't, you generate the picture. Now you have to deconstruct it, construct a new one. It takes way more work. And at very best, most people are split-minded, and that's going to lead to a performance breakdown. So it's just much, much easier to streamline it for yourself and start getting into that habit. If you find yourself saying, hey, don't go and, slice it over into OB, simple thing, you just say, hey, second chance. You don't have to get hard on yourself. You don't have to do anything. When you recognize it, you go, hey, second chance. That's not actually what I'm looking for. Now begin to realign your language to it. Other saboteur words that people use too. I mean, people do not pay attention to the words. The words have so much power because, again, it's building the mental movie that's going to be guiding you like it's your goal. And your subconscious mind and your brain's job is just a goal-achieving machine. It's got 13 trillion brain cells, all designed to manifest the things that you are thinking about. But other words are try. Try implies a lot of failure. It's a hook. Oh, I'll try to hit this fairway. Oh, I didn't do it. I tried. You see, and so again, we can strengthen it already by just committing to doing something. What am I committed to doing? Second chance, John. No, I'm not trying to do anything. What am I committed to doing? Making a nice, confident move here, and I'm striping it down the center. Hoping. I hope I play well, right? These things are scary. If you take it out of the golf language, right? You go to the doctors, they're going to put you into surgery and say, hey, Michael, we're pretty new at this. We hope we get it right. Man, you're running out of the doctor's office. You go to the mechanics. I never installed brakes like this before. We hope we installed it right. What do you mean you hope? Am I going to stop at the stop sign or not? But yet it sounds ridiculous in these contexts, but think about how you're talking to yourself and how wishy-washy that word hope is. I hope I play well. I just invested all this time into my practice, my mental game. I've been playing swing lessons. I hope I go out and can do good, right? Let's shift it to knowing. That one word shift gives you a better feeling thought. I know I can go play well because I've been putting the time in. I can be confident here and know I can go in and play good because I'm progressing. And there's just so much if you just listen to the language and the way it makes you feel inside. If it gives you kind of like a queasy or a feeling, it's the time to employ a second chance and move towards a better feeling thought because you can change your confidence just by a word choice. I hope I get off the tee well. I know I can. There's just a whole different thing, and it's up to you. You can pick your language. We can choose to approach it with confidence. And one other thing that's helped me a lot, and I'm sorry to ramble, there's shots we have faced, right? And you're like, oh gosh, I might lay sod all over this one. This is like, it's something really uncomfortable. A little mental hack is to give yourself permission to either fail forward fast or just say, hey, I'm going to make my mistake with confidence. Give yourself permission to make a confident mistake. Hey, you may lay saw over, but you're not going to decel. Let's just step up and choose to be confident if we're going to make a mistake. And I'm telling you, if you kind of employ that kind of weird little thing there, it's amazing how much freedom it gives you. It starts giving you permission to screw up, which is okay. It's how we learn. It's how we grow. And you actually get a better shot off there. But watch some of the language that you're using. And again, second chance. Second chance is just such a powerful thing we can do. You can't defeat the negative language by getting more negative. So you either have to employ second chance or do self-forgiveness, which isn't talked about a lot in golf, but it is another really powerful thing to stop that internal battle as you start to get more positive or you're starting to get a rut of negative thinking. Forgiveness just puts an end to it. So try to employ that. Direct your mind to what you want, and you're going to get a better result. And that's why you're putting in the time. So honor yourself in that regard.
If you're ready to get started with mental golf type, make sure to use the code WICKEDSMART at checkout, and you're going to save 25% on your investment.
Man, yeah, I love the second chance. I think I've never even thought about that. Cause I mean, yeah, it's like you said, you're still it might have, you see the water and maybe you went in there last time or that out of bounds and it's like, don't do that again. And I'm like, oh no. Now but it's like second chance is like a quick little reset that I think can help. And what was the last part you just said? Like if you're the sod example, like to fail forward, and there was something else that
Well, a concept I used a lot in my life to overcome, because I mean, even embarking on something like MGT, I mean, there's a lot of doubts that come in along the way. I mean, it's been a long journey. Am I on the right path? Is this right? Am I doing this correct? Is my writing okay? It's like there's just so many different components. But I had a great teacher that talked to me about that mentality of fail forward fast. And it seems negative at first. Like I'm a big language guy. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if that sits right with me. But then I'm like, that's really brilliant and profound because so many people fear failure. Well, I'm not going to peg it because, what if I screw up? What's that going to be like with people? They don't realize that like failure is the learning opportunities, and everybody who's got anything great has made a lot of mistakes along the way, but they're just not fearful of taking action, getting out there and getting the learning examples. So for me, what I was trying to do is embrace more of a growth mentality and say, hey, if I'm going to screw up, let's just fail forward fast. If that's the way to get to the goal, like to hit good shots, you have to hit a lot of bad shots in order to get a pure golf swing. Well, so the longer you hesitate, the more you put off, the longer it takes you to get to your greatness. And so I don't see failure as like an event or any of those things. I see it one thing only is inaction. And so as long as I'm taking action, I'm learning and I'm succeeding. I'm either going to do it or I'm going to learn. And one of the ways I've adapted that into the golf side is, look, mistakes happen, but what's the mistake that I'm going to be more disappointed with? Let's say with a tough lie around the green. I'm going to be much more disappointed in me going in there wishy-washy, making an uncommitted swing, decelling, and then laying sod all over the ball just to see it flood, right? And just flop forward. I'd much rather hit it confidently and go way over the green or do something like that where at least I stepped in confidently, made a swing and kind of went for it. And so what I started telling myself is you know what? Hey, a mistake might happen here. That's okay. This is actually a really difficult shot, even for someone like on tour or a professional. This is a demanding shot. So, hey, I might screw it up, but let's approach this with confidence. And it's a choice with confidence to say, hey, if I'm going to make a mistake, I want to do it this way. So at least I can keep my momentum going. I can feel good at least about the way I stepped into it. And then sure enough, once you've gotten over that fear of failure, you've given yourself permission to make a mistake and to just go for it. It usually works out pretty good. And there's been so many times I kind of surprised myself with like, whoa, that like actually turned out really well there. Where before I would have went in there, chunked it, put sod all over the ball, whatever. And now feeling like really defeated and deflated because I knew I had the picture in my mind, I didn't correct it, and I allowed that to take place. And so that's kind of how I've kind of played some little games to overcome that for me and just say, hey, go for it. And if you're going to make a mistake, do it with confidence.
I love that. If you're gonna make a mistake, do it with confidence. That's gonna stick with me. I think too, because yeah, there's nothing worse than standing over a shot and you're just still not 100% committed, and then you just give it that half-ass effort, and you're like, well, of course it
And
turned out
that's when the
bad.
big mistake happens, right?
Yeah.
Where if you're really committed and you say, hey, I'm just going to go for it with confidence, if I make the mistake, still your dispersion and your mistakes become so
Mhm.
much smaller because we're actually not putting forth a better effort. And so again, it just leads to another scoring opportunity. It might not be perfect, but you still
Mhm.
maybe a 40-foot putt rather than something tighter, but you're still now actually making a positive action.
Yeah, well, we always talk about the word don't, but I hadn't even really thought about hope and try either. I think those are ones that now it's like I'm gonna be every time I hear my playing partners now, I'm gonna be like, what are we saying there? Yeah, those are the
And the
big
other real
three.
big one, the other real big one that you'll never feel good if you use is should. I tell my players, don't should all over yourself.
Right.
When do you feel good when you should? I should have done this. Oh, I should
Hmm.
have done it that way. Oh, why did this? I should be this way. It's just, it's a terrible word. Just kind of go second chance when you hear that come up and hit a reframe.
Hmm. So if those words do come up, then like you said, we'll go with the second chance, and then we'll just have to, like you said, deconstruct that don't image and get more clear about what we want. So that way you can walk into that shot and, like you said, fail with confidence or have that commitment level at least. So the dispersion is a lot better, even if it isn't a perfect shot.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and you talked about it too. I think just to wrap that point up about like even in the visualization part, like things are gonna go bad. I think one of the biggest mistakes I did when I would visualize or imagine tournaments is just imagine everything going right. And 25 years in, I've never had a round where nothing didn't go wrong. And so it's like you gotta, even when you're at home, you're imagining it, you're thinking about winning that tournament or playing your best. You gotta think about what's gonna happen because you're gonna hit a perfect shot, it's in the divot. You're gonna hit the flagstick and it zips off the green. It's like but it's like, how are you going to react to that? So I think that having that also built in can just make a really big difference too. And I'm glad you said that just because a lot of people just try to visualize all the good things, but that just doesn't happen in golf. You're going to have adversity to overcome.
Yeah, well, we had a young man I've been working with for a number of years, but he was coming into Q school, just graduated for PGA of Americas. I think the new tour is, I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
it's called now. But yeah, 100%. So leading into Q school, what were we talking about for his visualization strategies was exactly that. So one is, hey, perfect day. What's that look like? Birdie every hole. It's a part of mental preparation. So we're going and seeing the plan being played to perfection. That's one activity. That's what everybody wants to do. But that's the ideal. We're just kind of doing that more is to see the strategies that we want to be playing out perfectly. But I said, hey, John, what's going to happen if you get out there and you start off slow? Right? And you're three over through five, right? How are we responding there? What
Hmm.
happens if you get off to a really hot start? We were at Q school one time. This guy, Michael, hit his first three holes. He had tap-in birdies for the first three. I mean, it was insane. And then you talk about putting the whammy. Somebody said to him, "When was the last time you got off to a tap-in birdie, birdie, birdie?" He's like, "I don't know. I don't think ever." And then, yeah, he kind of unraveled after that point. But again, these are things we want to be building out and thinking about. Now, here's the one thing that is our instruction. The one thing is you always come out successful. So even if you're looking at that slow start, it's now creating that story about how you're coming out successful, how you're handling that, how you're stepping it up and delivering coming down the stretch, how you're staying off to that hard start and staying with your pedal down, keep pursuing your birdie goals. So we're going through scenarios and situational golf. So you can be visualizing outcome, kind of process like we were showing ends and means, and then a lot of situational golf. When you look at the way like the Navy SEALs train mentally, most people aren't aware, like they know about the physical components, but those guys do tons and tons of mental rehearsal of their plans.
Hmm.
And they're not just going through the success plan. It's all of these different contingency plans, and it's all these extensive group and individual mental rehearsals of what your responsibility is, where you're at, all these things. Because here's the real the notion that they've learned. You never rise to the occasion. You only fall back on the training and under excruciating, like big stress and things that are like what, especially what they're doing. It's these mental rehearsals that the brain is falling back to when there's so much that there's cognitive impairment, that there's so much happening, that the heart rate's so high, there's so much stress, that these are the processes they fall back into. It's through the repetitions of different scenarios, with them always coming out on top. And again, when you're in a big tournament, you're at Q school. So long story short, here's our young man going through Q school. I think he was on this, he had 6 holes left. He was right in the line. And I was like 5 or 6 left, and he has a double. And so we got a couple holes left double. Now he's on the outside of the line looking in with like 3 or 4 holes to play out. And he birdied 2 or 3 of the last couple holes, came in and finished. And he talked to me after and he said, it was amazing. I was seeing all these different scenarios, but the one thing I kept happening at the end, John, was I could see myself holding the card. And he goes, once I had that double, there wasn't even a second thought in my mind. I was just to my task. I knew what I was doing. And he's like, it was amazing to see how that visualization and things panned out. And sure enough, he was in there, achieved the goal, and has the card and some status.
Yeah, Q school too. That's a biggest stage for that. I mean, that's literally your career.
So situational stuff is important. How do you handle these things? And we're building out those plans. We're
Hmm.
showing the brain what we want. Your brain's a supercomputer. You're the master of it. And the more we take charge of this, you're going to see it paying out more and more in your golf game.
Just a reminder, if you are ready to get going with Mental Golf Type, make sure to use the code WICKEDSMART at checkout and you're going to save 25% on your investment.
Man, there's so much good stuff already. I feel like I got to do a mid episode recap. So I love it. That's why it's always fun to talk with you because there's like the mental game. I've talked to other people about this too. It's like it's just such a big concept, and it feels overwhelming sometimes. And it's like, well, what's the goal? What can And the thing is, you can do stuff before the round, at home during. It's like there's just so many moving parts to it, and especially as you get better, it becomes more and more about the mental side and less about the physical because you know what you're doing. And I think that we really covered self-talk. I think I had that one already on there, so I think we did a good job with that. Kind of the other half of that, though, definitely too, is body language and carrying yourself the right way. Quite a few high school players that I'm coaching right now, and all their parents have said that that's an area to improve. And I know when I was in high school, my parents could tell from a hole away if I was doing good or bad. I still could improve a little bit, but for the most part, I definitely try and keep that chest up and walk proud. How does that align with self-talk? Is that more important, less important? I know it's a little bit dependent too with your personality type, which you can kind of cover. Tiger is going to be very different body language maybe than an extrovert. But what is the role of body language with the mental game?
Sure. Well, that's a good point. I mean, people think body language, they immediately think like, drill sergeant or military. And the reason the military trains you that is because you standing confidently makes you feel confident, makes you
Mm-hmm.
think confident. There's a reason like that's the first thing they're drilling into you constantly at boot camp. But yeah, Dustin Johnson's vibe and his confidence swag might be a little different than what Rory looks like versus Tiger. So again, it's really all about you being you. So a great activity is take some time when you can be in private, be an actor, and say, look, I'm playing the role of myself being the most confident I can possibly be on the golf course. Start noticing how you stand. How would you move? How would you talk? What gestures do you make? And start identifying, like, how do you express confidence with your body language? And then spend 5 minutes doing the opposite. Go into whenever you're feeling down, low power, not motivated. You'll see a shift. And what you'll experience as you go through those 5 minutes at either side is confident body language makes you think and feel more confident. After the 5 minutes of carrying yourself with low posture or in a negative way, you'll feel the difference in your mental and emotional state. But it's good to go through that. And then we can begin employing the concept of act as if. What is that really doing? It's more with your body language. We're carrying ourselves and moving and talking with the way that we want to be or what we're aspiring to be. And there's a lot of power with that. So what's more powerful, your body language or your self-talk? I think they are of equal dynamic. So what I see is we call it the BET system. So it'd be body language, emotions, and thoughts. While they're all independent units, they do work together collectively as a team, right? And they have different roles, but they're a team unit, and our brains are always striving to be congruent. And we pick this up all the time in language. Like if I was sitting there, my arms are crossed, and I'm like this, you're like, "What's wrong, John?" And I said, "Nothing," right? Nothing. You wouldn't believe that. There's like a disconnect. There's an incongruency. You say, "Oh, come on, what's going on?" And so we're always matching up. So one of the things is what's good with self-talk or body language is these are tour habits you can adopt right now without having to be a tour player. So learning to carry yourself properly and walk with that confidence that you're eliciting in that activity, what it's doing to you is one, it's going to make it easier for you to accept the self-talk or align with the emotions that's congruent with your body language. So a lot of people run into an error with self-talk because they have low power posture. They're on the first tee, their arms are crossed, they're all worried, and they say, "Well, I'm going to hit a good shot." And they wonder why it gets rejected. Well, because there's a big mismatch. It's the same as if you said, "What's wrong, John?" Nothing. Like it's not going to go in. So if you're having a hard time accepting new self-talk or positive self-talk, you're probably carrying yourself in a way that is incongruent with allowing that to be accepted and received. You could think of it like a gatekeeper or like a bouncer at the door.
Yeah, that's really good.
Nightclub,
That makes a ton of sense.
right? So if you got it, that self-talk is going to align with that, and that's what's going to be accepted. If you're like this and you're not feeling good, you say, "I'm confident," you know what that's like. It goes in and it's like, yeah, not really. What's more real right now is I've been hitting it poor and I don't feel confident. Because again, it's going to match up. So
Hmm.
adjust the body language first.
Hmm.
Then start going and adjusting thoughts and emotions. How would we adjust the emotions? Through power questions and through eliciting the feelings like we had talked about. But again, if you're having a hard time getting into gratitude, check your body language, probably not lining up.
Hmm.
So the easiest thing is thoughts and emotions can be a little harder. Body language, you can put it on. You can be an actor with body language, and that's what the power is of that act as if. And it's actually a post-shot response or a way to eliminate cortisol. So they've done studies where after a minute or more than a minute of holding yourself in high power posture, your cortisol levels are decreasing and DHEA levels are increasing. Conversely, the kids you're talking about, right? Why it's important, if they understand the practical reasons on why, by the time they go and carry themselves in that negative body language, right? By the time they get to their next ball, how many minutes has gone by? 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, what do we know on that happens when we're carrying negative body language? You have an increase in cortisol and you have a decrease in DHEA. So cortisol is the number one thing we're trying to get rid of. That's the peak performance. If you really want to summarize your mental game, eliminate cortisol or the stress response. That's it. If you eliminate cortisol, you're going to get access to your full motor capabilities of what you've been grooving and the full capabilities of your physical talent. Okay, but now let's look at it. You're carrying yourself with low body language. You're not really taking it serious. Well, I already know by the time that guy gets to that next shot, he's already behind the eight ball. There's cortisol going in, and his motor cortex is going to start getting suppressed or inhibited. And it's regardless of what your mental golf type. Now your mental golf type kicks in. You have a change in focus, change in how you're making a decision. Now there's more cortisol. That motor cortex of the brain is now being inhibited like a vice grip, and now there's your big miss. Meanwhile, that kid who just hit the poor shot could have a really easy response on how to handle it. Doesn't have to be that hard to get over a shot. Carry yourself with great body language until you get to the next one. That's how you'll get over it. Because by the time you've carried yourself confidently, you've focused on keeping yourself looking confident, projecting that out there. But after the minute, there's a hormonal shift and chemical shift going on in your body. Now your thoughts are aligning because you're walking with confidence. Like, hey, I got this shot. It's really not that bad. I'll make it work. I've got out of tougher situations. And now the confident feelings are coming back. Super easy.
Yeah, I think that too. It's just like one of those things where you just like forget about how it just has that direct like correlation sometimes, and it's like you just think it's Tony Robbins told me to be positive, so I'm going to be that. But it's like no, there's literally this is the cortisol release. This is like helping you, get to that better state, that better feeling. And I think also too, you mentioned kind of walking and writing. Walking actually does make it a little bit easier because sometimes you're still mad, and then you jump in the cart and you're there in like 30 seconds. And
Right.
still pissed off. So it's like walking. I have a couple tournaments coming up where you have to walk, and I'm actually excited about it because I do tend to, you have a little more time to kind of like just be calm down and take some breath and carry yourself and have more, because it's also weird if you're just like talking to yourself, having great self-talk, and you're riding with a guy in a cart and you're giving yourself your own motivation pep talk, which I have definitely done. But
well, here's what you would do in the cart situation.
Okay. Yeah, this is good.
You have less time. You got less time. So you can still use your body against like to take rid of the tension and the frustration. So you do a neuromuscular like tension release. So you sit down in the car and you're frustrated, right? You sit nice and tall, but you take all the energy, breathe in deeply for a couple seconds, and then squeeze a portion of muscles. It could be your arms, could be balling up in here, and you're taking that tension, holding your breath,
and then just exhale it all
completely loose. And you can do that for 3 breaths, upper part of the body, the core, and your lower region. And you're kind of just taking that tension and then releasing it out. And that's shifting your body language. And you're also getting rid of some of that harbor tension. You can do it within a couple seconds. And within 20 seconds or so, do the tension release, breathe in, tense everything, hold temporarily, let it go limp. And that's one way you can kind of take that tension in on itself, do something different physiologically. So you're not just sitting there going into those old patterns.
Yeah, a lot of people just grab their phone and then their heads down and they're just, not doing anything to help themselves out. And then you get right up there, throw the phone down, and all of a sudden you're still in that negative state and you got to try and hit the next one.
Yeah. And so you just haven't had enough time to process with it. But yeah,
but even in the cart, that's a good idea. So yeah, so the breathing and then just like you said, the muscle, what'd you call it? Muscle tension kind of exercise then?
I believe the technical term is neuromuscular progressive relaxation, but it's
okay.
Like,
you got the wicked smart term here. All right.
Yeah. Well, everybody's kind of heard of a progressive relaxation where you like start your feet and try to like relax the muscles. This is more of like creating tension first to feel relaxation. So if you're a person who deals with a lot of tension out on the golf course, this is a great exercise for you because you're probably not aware of the harbor tension, and that's off the movement and the swing. Also, if we're in a big stress situation, the blood flow and the way the blood's working in our body changes. So it's leaving your extremities and it's going into your core. What can sometimes happen in your putting, you're losing sensitivity. That's why the increased pressure. So you feel like you're at a 5 or your normal grip pressure, but you're really at like an 8 out of 10 because there's less blood flow and you're not feeling it. So it feels the same way, but it's with increased tension. So if that's something you're doing or you experience or you're in a big moment, you can do that same process as you're getting over the putt, squeeze it to a 10, take it to a 0, and then set it to normal.
Yeah.
And now you're getting your normal grip pressure there, and you can take some of the tension you're feeling because of the moment and kind of create a good handset and relaxed grip so you have normal performance.
Okay. Yeah, man, that's a really good one too. It's kind of goes right along with where I was going on the next one of one of the biggest mistakes is getting too angry, right? Like there's people that just freak out. I've definitely been there. I've thrown clubs and lakes and done all kinds of stupid stuff over the years. But I was talking with Dr. Rick Sessinghouse, Colin Morikawa's coach, and he was talking about how certain people still need to like process like those bad shots. So, and I think I'm definitely kind of one of those. I have quite a few guys that, reach out to me in anger and, club throws. And I had one guy said he actually kicked the windshield of a golf cart out. So, I mean, alpha males, we got some testosterone, golf has some ups and downs. What would you say, like, is it like, do you have like a word, or like, how do you cope with like a really bad, like not just like I hit it thin, it's still on the front edge of the green. We're talking like a horrible shot. Like, I know, so the mistake would be getting too mad. So what is like the kind of maybe idea or something to like decompress the Chernobyl like situation?
Well, yeah, we're human beings, right? So we're not machines. So you're going to have that. I like what you have done with creating triggers to bring in a closure to it. So if you have one of those big moments you were talking about, you could rip your glove off. We talked
Last
about,
time I did that, I ripped the whole glove in half. Just a heads up
yes, you
there.
got to watch some of that, right? Putting the club back in the bag a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing I've done on tour is if we hit a really bad shot and my guy was really upset about it, I wouldn't take his club. I made him carry it until he was ready to process it and give it back.
Oh, that's good. That's perfect.
And then he was ready to hand it to me. I said, "Are you done with it? Like, did you finalize everything?" And I'm like, "Hold it a little long." And so I made him carry that club for as long as he wanted to hold on to the bad shot.
Uh-huh.
And it served kind of as a mental thing. It's like, you're still back there. When you're ready to go forward with me, I'll take the club back. Okay. Tiger has his 10-step rule. Some of this comes into training using your visualization as a way to desensitize some of the intense anger.
Yeah.
Another thing is understanding, though, here's what it's actually doing to your brain. Your memory is connected really with emotion. So the more there's an emotional connection to something, the more it gets imprinted into your long-term memory. One way to start neutralizing some of the anger is realizing, is that the thing that you want to impress into your memory?
Definitely
Right?
not.
Because the stronger the emotion, the
Right.
more impactful the imprint becomes.
That's why you remember, like I remember where I was when 9/11 happened, or, when this big event happened. Like, you have those high emotions, and a lot of times, like you said, they're negative, and our mind wants to remember those negative ones to, hopefully avoid the fight or flight, right? So it's like, but yeah, when you're adding all that emotion, then you're going to remember that shank or that top.
It's linking up more. But conversely, you also have positive emotion stuff. Like, think about one of your most epic situations on golf. You probably had a gesture. You probably had a moment that if you did the same fist pump, or I've seen some of your pictures, you have some good Tiger fist pumps and things.
Gotta
right?
do it. Gotta do
But
it.
if you do that, though, right now, one of your power gestures, you probably elicit that same state right back. I hit a half court, like a little over a half court shot in front of my whole school in 8th grade. It was like the big school assembly game against the rival school we merged together in high school with.
Okay.
So it was a big bragging right game. And I hit this half quarter and it was all silent. It goes through, it's like splash, all the sound comes back. It was such a high emotional experience. And I'm going, yes, yes. And I was firing my fist. To this day, because of that, it's linked. I could do that as a way in the morning to get myself pumped up before a talk, or from feeling de-energized. I fire those power gestures. Why? It was such a great emotional experience that was immediately impressed into long term. And so one thing is we want to neutralize some of the negatives, but what players and the mistakes that they're doing is, and this is average and even pros, is they just reinforce their mistakes so adamantly, and they're putting emotion behind it. And what they don't realize is, again, you're grooving that pathway and saying, this is my goal, this is my goal, this is my goal, this is my goal. And that's not what we want. In fact, we want to be doing opposite processes and learn how to not tear ourselves down, but to start giving adequate credit where credit is due, so that our brain stores this to memory and says, yes, this is what I want to do more of. Yes, this is why I'm practicing, do more of this. But players are reinforcing the things, and that's why they see so many of those same tendencies emerging. And it's stemming from the emotional connection that's there. So when you're looking at that anger and the intensity of that versus the little bit of confidence you're bringing in to win in the tournament, it's just not it's a mismatch. What are you going to do more of? That anger situation, that's much more compelling to the brain. And again, I think it was Tony Robbins said, emotions, energy, and motion. Like we're setting this in and telling our brain, this is what we actively want to pursue. Good exercise after your good rounds of golf and you hit your 10 out of 10s, go back in it, recapture that feeling, recapture the satisfaction, give yourself the credit where it's due. And then as you're feeling it coming back, start gripping your club.
Just like
And
as an anchor, kind of.
start anchoring it in. Every time I
Yeah.
grip my club, I feel like this. Yes. And you give
Yeah.
yourself, get back into it. What else did I like about that shot? Oh, yeah, this one, when I hit that flighted shot in there and it gripped and went right to the pin. Yes. And then you say, that's for me. And we start taking that positive emotion. We're really driving in to remember those patterns. And then we look at things that are less than optimal, like below an 8 out of 10 or so. And we're looking to get the new lesson. And instead of replaying that old film, starting to say, okay, well, in this situation going forward, what would I have done different? Different club, different decision, different commitment in my shot process. Okay, once you've identified one thing there, now replay this movie, put yourself there and say, yes, this is what I want. Next time I'm in this situation, this is what I'm playing out. And we start updating that. So now our minds are getting the imprints of the things that we want, our successes. We're linking that to memory. We're linking that to the action of our gripping of our club. So it's getting reinforced as we go to the golf course next time, to the driving range. And we're showing our brain the lesson. Now, mistakes transform into lessons as soon as you start finding the learning there, and then you're showing the brain the update. So now what happens now you look back at your round, you're not thinking about where you screwed up. Your brain's already thinking about your new improvement route. You've now installed a different program there of what to do in that situation or going forward, and you're much more likely to achieve that. Negative emotions are hard to deal with, but they are like really adamantly working against your game. So if you can take that, we can be a little more objective or be striving to relink those positives.
So also, I stopped my punching steering wheels a few years ago. I'm very glad that could have went badly, very bad. I had to ice my hand in the cooler one time. That was, I think, 2022. That was actually pre-MGT, pre-Wicked Smart. So I'm glad I got rid of that. The guy that kicked the windshield, that was kind of funny because I imagined the Leonidas kick, in 300. But it's just funny, like what the game can do. And I guess I just learning, I feel like I've known a lot of this stuff, but you explain it in such a good way of just how it reinforces and in a negative way of what we don't want to have happen. So that's why I just like asking you questions like that, because even the club, like you don't get to put that club in the bag yet if you're still pissed off. Like that's a great little trigger that everybody can, because you need some time after like a really bad shot sometimes. And so it's like, don't put that thing in there yet until we get a little bit of closure. Because the biggest thing I hear is blow up holes. And, usually it's from melting down after a bad shot, still, giving it 50% on the next one, then you're, 25% on the next shot. So it's like, if we can have little closure triggers like that, I think that's huge. And I just surveyed, I had over 200 people respond. And I had actually quite a few guys that were in their 60s, and they asked me, multiple ones asked me the same thing, where they said, can I still improve my mental game at an older age? And it sounds like what you're saying, from what we talked about so far, is that yes, like no matter how old you are, it's just repetition. It's just having to break some of those old patterns to retrain our memory to get that emotion response better. But the problem is that, if you're 60, you might have been doing this thing for 30 years. So it's going to be a little bit harder to break. But I was surprised I had multiple people email me about that.
Yeah. I mean, you just probably have really well developed neural pathways that there may not be supportive of
but there is hope still, is what I guess I'm trying to say for
Sure.
them.
Well,
It's
I mean,
just,
how do we do that? We say, hey, we just acknowledge that this is my habit. And where is it that I'm moving forward here? And so some of that's acknowledging that these things are built up. But yeah, you can always change. And again, going back to what our number one paradigm is for golf improvement and playing better and enjoying the game more is stress management. And so no matter where you're at, whether you're a high handicapper, whether you're in your 60s or older, you can be working your mental golf type to eliminate stress in your game and get great performance. I mean, my dad, unfortunately, is no longer with us. He was my favorite guy to be working with. I mean, he's in his 70s. He had Parkinson's. He had stage 4 cancer. And yet he still loved the grind. He would get out there as much as he could. But my dad wasn't going actively through swing lessons. He won his league multiple years. with the same swing that was there before, was preventing him from getting there, but he took an active effort of applying his mental game. And he's like, you know what? The same thing applies for me. I have my good and I have my bad. My bad happens with these tendencies. So, I mean, he would always talk with his buddies out there too. He's like, hey, you got to understand where your stress is coming from because the game can be a lot easier. And
That's awesome.
so, yeah, I mean, everybody can be growing. It's just a matter of, hey, are you open? The challenge is if you're let's say, getting older, are you in a fixed mindset at this point?
Mm.
Because actually, when we were just at one of our coaches, Cheryl Anderson, qualified into her fourth U.S. Senior Women's Open in a row. She's a full-time teaching pro, still qualifying in. And there was a woman, I'm sorry if the name is eluding me right now. She was 85 and shot better than her
Oh, I
age.
saw that on Instagram. That was amazing.
85 years old, competing in the grandest tournament of the year for
Oh yeah,
senior women's. I mean,
I literally screenshot that. I'm like, this is legit goals. Like that is amazing. It's and like you said,
so
the mindset piece. Like if everybody read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, I feel like they'd be a better like that should be a required read in like high school. Don't you think? It's like because you just said
100%.
that like, and I see that so much. God, I see that so much. That fixed mindset that this is who I am. This is how I am in my career. This is my golf game. This is my body. It's that complacency and it drives me crazy when I can't even be around people like that. I have a very small group of friends because I do not accept that. I don't want that in my life. And like you just said, you can be 85 still playing in that event, shooting your age with the right mindset. And so I'm so glad you brought that up. I haven't talked about that book in a
And this
while.
is where fail forward fast comes in. If you're in 60, hey, let's fail forward fast. Because when you're in the arena, you're learning and you're succeeding. There is
Mhm.
just failures in action, staying stuck in that mindset. Success or learning, it's the way to
Yeah.
go. And you're never
Exactly.
too
There's no
old to do
failures.
that.
It's just you gotta have the right mindset though. So I know we're coming up on our time here. So before getting into the last question, because this is also very common with the listeners, what is the best place to follow you? I'll definitely link to all the MGT. I'm sure this will be a two-part episode, so I'll talk more about it. But yeah, anything new you guys are rolling out or any updates, anything? I know that a lot of people from the podcast have already joined, but what's the best place to learn more about MGT?
Yeah, you can go to mentalgolftype.com and we invite everybody to go on and take our mental fitting. It's free and complimentary. You can go on, takes a couple minutes. It'll help you discern your innate strengths and what you do great that causes your mind to relax and the things you perform well on the course, and also indicate kind of those stressors. So that's free. You can get on and get your mental golf type report. All the information on our training programs and things are there. And you can check us out on at mental golf type on Instagram and YouTube.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean it's really transformed my game, and I have so many people that will take the survey or take the assessment, and then they'll email me like, "How does John know who I am?" Like it's so accurate how your assessment comes back and be like, "That is exactly what I do when I get stressed," or "That's exactly what I do when I'm playing well," and people just don't even understand it. And that's only what 8, 10 questions, something like that. And it's amazing how accurate you've made that. I can't tell you how many people are like, this is like John knows me.
Yeah, and this is our first component we really want to master. This helps to release the cortisol. Then a lot of the things we talked about is hitting that second level of mind. That's your subconscious self-image. You can amend that through tools like the mental fitness, the self-talk, like we talked
Hmm.
about. And then it's all about that commitment to just taking charge on the course. Simple thing, you run the bet system. Keep that in check on the course. Give yourself some simple things to go focus on in your process, and it's going to take you to some better scoring and happier days on the course.
Love it, man. I know the mental fitting. I think that whenever you described that to me 2 years ago, I think that's the best way to think about mental golf type is just you don't play stock clubs if you're getting good. You don't have the same advice if you want to take your mental game to the next level. So kind of the last question I had, I'm not kidding you. I had, like I said, 200 people fill out the survey, and I feel like the number one thing I heard was, how do I focus the entire round? And I always say, don't try to focus the whole round. Like we don't have like that much mental stamina. And could you, I guess, maybe elaborate? I always heard, or I think I was, maybe a Dr. Bob Rotella book or somewhere, like go wide and then narrow. Like, you're trying, and that's where I really learned about you from Mental Golf Type was what am I doing in between shots? I'm talking to my playing partners. I'm keeping my eyes up. I'm feeding a dog. I'm, looking at the squirrels. Like I'm doing that. And it's so funny because people think that you have to be like Tiger singular focus for 5 hours. And if you're trying to do that, you're going to be burned out by like the 10th hole. So can you maybe just share your thoughts on focus and if I'm on the right path there?
Yeah, sure. So a couple quick things is one, set up a performance bubble. Know when you need to turn your focus on.
And so
That
that's
again,
like when you're
bring some
walking into a
closure.
shot. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, do you need 20 yards? You need a couple
Mm,
feet to where you're starting to disconnect and plug into your shot. So that can be helpful. You can do a little trigger if you need to, double snap when you exit. Again, that helps to bring closure to a shot if you think of it like, hey, this is my performance area. But what's really helpful in between shots is understanding your mental golf type. How are you wired to really be directing your mental energy? So we each recharge our batteries a little differently. We have Phil, he's a nice talker like we are. If you're an extroverted person, talk, use your playing partners to your advantage, engage in small talk. This is actually calming your brain down to elevate focus for that output at time at the shot. If you're an introvert, find ways to start carving out time for you to enjoy your own private space. Enjoying meditation time, some activities and more in the solitude, enjoy that interior space. But understanding your mental golf type really, really helps. So many players, especially like our juniors, you have an extroverted parent and they have an introverted child, and they go,
mm,
oh, he's not enjoying himself out there because he's not engaging in between shots. But that introvert's actually being more natural to their way and doing
yeah.
exactly what they want, being in their space,
I
being in
never
that.
thought about that with parents too. Yeah, that's because yeah, I could totally see them, like observing, an introvert and be like, oh, he's not having any fun, and
Why
that's
is he
not
not talking to anybody?
right.
Is
Yeah.
well, he's not really wired to. That's actually causing his focus to actually leak
Hmm.
through the round, and vice versa. My kid's talking too much. He's not focusing out there. No,
Yeah.
he's actually keeping himself relaxed, so he will be able to elevate once he gets into that performance bubble. So in our first free lesson inside of Mental Golf Type, once you go in and take the free fitting, we also open up a complimentary lesson, and you can learn a little bit more in there on some strategies that would relate to keeping the focus at levels high. And then how do we recharge? Because it's impossible to focus for 4.5 hours. It doesn't happen. We have never done that with anything. So it's more a matter of taking charge and being able to turn it on,
Hmm.
unplug, and then know the appropriate ways that you're recharging just to kind of stay in a good vibe through the remainder of your round.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like people think if they're not trying to focus, they're not trying hard enough. It's like, that type A kind of mentality can come out. But yeah, once I learned when I started using mental golf type, that's the thing is I started feeling less exhausted after the rounds. I mean, sure, if you're playing in heat or it's a super intense tournament, you might feel it still, but it's like you're still having time. Like you said, it's a battery. And if you don't, but you can charge your phone in between shots. You can charge your mind in between shots, and so it's nice when you have those little triggers and things that you can do. And I always joke though, you got to learn all this stuff, but then you got to remember to do it. And so that's the thing is like now I've used this stuff for 2+ years now. So I know that, in between shots, I'm still talking, I'm doing this, and I quickly catch myself if my head goes down or I'm, trying to get negative or doing these things. So it's funny, you have to learn it and then you have to keep applying it. And sometimes you might even be doing some of it already, subconsciously, you might just be a talkative person. And then you realize, oh, that actually does help me out. But sometimes you might be too talkative and then you're still talking up in your performance bubble, like you said, too. So it's funny, but I'm just glad you could clarify that a little bit because I'm telling you, everybody thinks they have to focus for 4.5 hours. And I'm like, if you guys figure out how to do that, let me know. I can barely make it 45 minutes writing in, one task here.
Right. I mean, the reality is you're maybe looking at maybe a max of 38 minutes of focus spread
Right.
out in pockets. What I look at with my players is I can learn to focus really effectively for 40 seconds.
Hmm.
And then I can really train myself to get quiet for that 1 or 2 seconds during my swing after my breath. Now, those are a lot more achievable little chunks that we can work on rather than trying to stay engaged fully for the whole round. No, how many segments are we able to give our full attention for these 40 seconds? I'm locked in, I'm giving it everything I have. And that's something a little more achievable and something to strive for.
Well, John, I'm going to have to do a full recap episode so I understand all this stuff as well. So we're going to have your two-parter and then my recap coming up. So thank you so much again for sharing so much. Again, there is so much stuff in here. If people just apply half of it, their golf game is going to improve without changing their swing. And so I just appreciate you being our first 4-time guest. And if you'll have us back for number 5 in the future.
Oh, I love to. Thanks for having me again, buddy.